All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show back in my normal digs. Thank you for you guys for the past couple of days dealing with me. Obviously, Thanksgiving logistics. We all know we got to go through that kind of thing this time of year, of course, with dealing with family and all that. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me. But back in my normal setup, and even though it's a game day Sunday, it's not a game day, of course, for the Dallas Cowboys. So we all get to sit back and relax. But that doesn't mean there's not spicy news. In fact, there's been a recent report that I think is a huge indication of what Jerry Jones wants to do when it comes to a key player going forward. We'll get to all that news plus a lot of other spicy stuff as always. But first, let's get things going with a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser, if you will. And I saw this post on X, and I really wanted to highlight it courtesy of Dan Rogers, who's a pretty good follow if you're looking for just sort of interesting Cowboys tidbits and information. He wrote, "The Eagles cannot collapse and miss the playoffs. It's just not possible. They have borrowed so much money from future seasons to build their current roster. It would be a major embarrassment." Obviously, a little bit of a facetiousness there from Rogers, but you can see here, based on the graphic that he shares, this is the NFL cap hit and void years. Now, anyone who's not familiar, void years are essentially years you add on to the back end of a contract to allow you to spread out the salary cap hit where the player is not technically under contract on your team, but you're paying him against a salary cap. It's just financial engineering to get you under the salary cap. So, for example, let's say you want to give Jalen Hurts, picking on the Eagles here, a $100 million check this year to sign him and keep him on the roster and keep him happy, right? But you don't want it to be a 2-year $100 million deal and have a $50 million per year cap hit, right? So what do? You have a 2-year deal, $100 million, you give him that check, and then you had 3 void years on the back end of that to spread out the cap hit. So instead of 2 years with $50 million cap hit each, you have 5 years, $20 million cap hit each. But in all actuality, after 2 years, Jalen Hurts becomes a free agent. So what does that mean? It means there's 3 years on the back end of the deal where you have Jalen Hurts counting against your salary cap, even though he may not even be on your team. And if you do re-sign him, it will be extra where Jalen Hurts will count against your cap. So void years are a great way to borrow from the future to pay for today, right? But obviously, the rent always comes due. As we all know in our lives, anytime you borrow from the future to pay for today, you eventually got to pay the piper. And the Eagles, based on the graphic you can see on the screen, are in a position where they're going to have to pay the piper eventually. I mean, they have $450 million in cap hits in future void years, which is absolutely ridiculous. They're more than $200 million ahead of the second best team, or second highest team, I should say, in the Cleveland Browns. The Saints then at 164, the 49ers at 138, Detroit at 94, 91, 84, 78, 73, Dallas right around the middle of the pack at 44, which is, again, kind of a standard number. You can see once you get down to about Jacksonville and Denver at 11, 12, most teams end up with about 60 to 30 before it's all said and done. Obviously, you want to use some void years where it makes sense, but the Eagles have made it their number one roster building strategy. And they did it with the sole purpose of going hyper aggressively all in, building a lot of talent, giving them a lot of cash up front, and then spreading that out and say, listen, we'll deal with 2028, 2029, 2027, 2030 when that comes, right? We're all about now. We're all about winning now. And it worked last year for sure. And they're still in a good position, right? They're first place in the NFC East. But right now, after losers of back-to-back games and some lackluster offensive performances even before that, there's a lot of questions with Philadelphia. And the reality is the Eagles are still a good team. They're a playoff team, undeniably so. But they mortgaged literally their entire future, basically after the 2027 season. They're going to be in a world of hurt. Right, how they're going to build their roster. They're going to be a team that's going to have a quarter of their cap hit. It's just going to be immediately just wiped away. They're going to be at a huge disadvantage to the other 31 NFL teams just right off the rip in 2 years. So they've got a chance to win a championship now and really in 2026. And then after that, they're going to be in a really tough situation. They're going to have to crush every single draft, like every single pick, like 3rd, 4th round picks are going to have to be just studs every single time. The Eagles have to win now, and right now they're struggling. Right now, that doesn't mean they won't turn it around and do great things, but it does speak to different roster building strategies. Do you want to go hyper aggressive to the extreme, all in now? I don't. I don't want to be Philadelphia in this situation. You don't want to be. You talk to Eagles fans right now, the more rational ones that aren't crazy, you want to throw bricks at you. They'll sit there and say they're not happy with the situation. They don't like the coaching. They know they're in a tough situation with a cap. They know they're not going to get great draft picks, so they're sitting there right now like, what do we do? There is no path forward to the future except hoping our guys play better and hoping our coaches coach better. That's not a good situation to be in. The Cowboys have been in that situation in years past. I remember then under Jason Garrett, they're in a lot of those situations. We're like, hey, maybe Garrett will figure it out, right? Maybe the guys will play better. And listen, sometimes they do, and sometimes you have a good season. But if that's your strategy, eventually it falls apart and eventually it collapses. I'd much rather be, I know it sounds weird because the Eagles just won a Super Bowl last year and I feel good about that, of course. But where we sit today, and even though the Eagles have a better record and they're probably going to win the NFC East, although we don't know how the entire playoff picture will shake out when it's all said and done, I'd much rather be Dallas today based on their future prospects, cap space, cap flexibility, not an extreme amount of void years. They have their quarterback, good scheme for the quarterback. They've got cap options in terms of cuts and restructures, 2 first-round picks, right? This is a team that's got a lot of flexibility and a viable path forward. The Eagles, their only hope right now is just maybe they can play better. Hope is not a strategy. I think the Cowboys are in a much better spot than their division rival. All right, let's get into the news here. And this is sort of the most under-the-radar report I've seen basically in the past month. And I think people are glossing over it, and I think it's really important. So this is a courtesy of John Machota. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones on 105.3 The Fan on Micah Parsons. Micah is very impactful, but we really had one with Micah. Not because of Micah, we just had one because the opponent was able to work around us having Micah. They ran right at him, or they basically threw the ball quicker. Those are simplistic things, and there was no question if we could replace him with 4 or 5 top players, Pickens-type players, that was all in the thinking with Micah Parsons. So everything Jerry Jones says here isn't necessarily wrong. It's something that Jerry Jones has kind of said in different ways over the course of the past few months. But there's one big thing here that's been totally not really focused on, and that's the George Pickens reference. He didn't reference Quinnen Williams. He didn't reference Kenny Clark. He didn't reference Donovan Ezeraku. He didn't reference additional first-round picks. He didn't reference any of that, right? He didn't reference cap flexibility, right? In terms of directly. The only option outside of Micah Parsons, the only name, the only asset he mentioned was Pickens. Jerry Jones has made his decision. I think this report, along with the other reports we've heard, has made it abundantly clear. They're going to extend Pickens, and they're going to give him a lot of money. And I think whether you think that's the right move or not, they're going to do it. The timeline of it, of course, will remain to be seen. Whether it happens at the end of this season, I think it should wait, let the season play out. Franchise tag him, work it through the offseason. Of course, I think that's the best plan. But I think the Cowboys front office, Jerry Jones specifically, said, listen, we're going to lock down Pickens. And I think that's the right move to make, right? Assuming he wants to agree to a team-friendly deal if he doesn't just tag him and let it ride out and work out a contract situation there. But it's very viable with the Cowboys to do this, right? They can do a Dak restructure, and that alone essentially pays for it. And when you factor in Terrence Steele and Trayvon Diggs' salary cap, veteran June 1st releases, potentially Malik Hooker as well, although they'll probably want to hold on to Hooker just to get some veteran presence as safety until at least after the NFL draft and after free agency to see how things shake out there. But the Cowboys will have cap flexibility, for sure. And they'll have a lot of options in terms of extending Pickens and how they want to structure that. There's even, if you really wanted to get some really cute with some restructures with CeeDee Lamb. And now that would be interesting, right, in order to make sure George Pickens can stay. So you can make that argument as well. The reality is, if you listen to this report and look at what everything Jerry Jones has said and everything the Cowboys have said, they want Pickens, they love Pickens, he fits in with the team, Lamb loves him. Don't discount Lamb loving him, by the way. The fact they work well together, that's critically important. But the reality is, again, look at this report again, guys. Micah Parsons is mentioned a bunch. The only other player, when he talked about players they get with Micah Parsons, instead of having Micah Parsons, is Pickens. Dallas will use their cap flexibility for George Pickens. I know we have Quinnen Williams. I know we have Kenny Clark, and they'll figure out a way to make that work, right? That's going to happen too. And like I said a second ago, we all know they have flexible options in terms of generating more cap space, both this upcoming offseason and in future years. But the reality is, Jerry Jones just sent a message that he's made his decision. I don't understand why this isn't front page news, right? In terms of the fact that Micah Parsons is mentioned and George Pickens is mentioned. Jerry would have given Micah Parsons a huge contract. He was going to make him one of the highest paid players in NFL history. He's going to do the same thing with George Pickens. Not the same level of scale in terms of one of the highest paid players in NFL history, but he's going to give him a massive contract. He's made his decision. He's made his mind up. At this point, it's just a matter of, I think, regardless, unless something crazy happens, a God forbid an injury or something really funky happens there, I think Pickens, he's going to get a big deal, and he's going to be a Dallas Cowboy for a very long time. Jerry Jones, he's made up his mind. All right, let's get into this next report here, courtesy of 105.3 The Fan. Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones on Kevontae Turpin's critical fumble recovery late in the fourth quarter of Dallas's win over the Chiefs. That fumble recovery is as big a play as I've seen in years. Yeah, for anyone, of course, who forgot, of course, the Cowboys were up by 7, driving, of course, to go up by 2 scores late. Turpin fumbles the football. Pickens fumbles the football. Turpin hustles to it and recovers it, basically making up for his fumble against the Philadelphia Eagles. High effort play from Kevontae Turpin, one of the better plays of the season for sure. But it speaks to the effort culture that has been branded in by Shoddy into this football team, right? And listen, Pickens is part of that too. His yards after catch, his effort. It's a little frenetic. Obviously, the fumble's not ideal. But the Cowboys play with a lot of effort. Of course, the Elijah Clark play, Malik Davis, who we'll get to it a little bit as well, Javonte Williams, right? Overshown, right? All these guys, Jadeveon Clowney, it's Quentin Williams, Kenny Clark, everybody, right? It's been an effort team. It's been an effort culture. Heck, even a guy who didn't play on Thursday, Guyton, the young left tackle, of course, one of the things I love about him is the effort he plays with, the intensity he plays with. He's far from perfect, but he plays with a high motor, high intensity. Love to see it. And that's what the Cowboys have really bought in terms of Shoddy, in terms of an effort culture, an intensity culture. And that's why the accountability, right? You cut Kyrie Elam. You're willing to bench Lamb and Pickens if they miss meetings. You're willing to bench Trayvon Diggs before the Packers game. You're willing to make some tough roster moves across the board. So-and-so is no longer a starter. So-and-so is now earning more, whatever it may be, right? Because you're trying to establish accountability. You're trying to make sure every snap is precious and you've got to earn it. You get guys going full speed, high effort, high motor plays every single snap. Whether it's a guy like Elijah Clark, an undrafted free agent fighting for it just to be active, or a guy like Kevontae Turpin who's trying to make more opportunities in the plays he has on the field, who, aside from his fumble against Philadelphia, right, which of course was a terrible play, just tripped and fumbled over himself, he's had two really good games. Special teams, not so much. Not been a big factor at all this year on special teams. But he obviously had a big play against Philly to kind of jumpstart the comeback. And then, of course, had a pretty productive day against the Chiefs on Thanksgiving. Again, he doesn't have to be a superstar just to be sort of a Weapon X kind of guy for the Cowboys offense going forward. And I think his effort, his intensity, his motor, it showed up with one of the biggest plays of the year. And again, the fact that Jerry Jones himself is saying this is one of the biggest plays we've seen in years. Now, listen, Jones is known for a little hyperbole for sure, but it speaks to the effort culture. It's gone all the way down from Elijah Clark, again, undrafted free agent guy battling just to be active on game days, all the way to the top of the owner, right? All the way to the top of the organization, where effort is the most important thing. Hustle is the most important thing. It speaks to one of these elements of Shoddy and what he's done with his energy and the buy-in he's got from every level of the organization. It's not just Dak Prescott bought in. It's not just defense bought in. It's not just George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb bought in. It's not just the O-line bought in. It's not just Elijah Clark being bought in. It's Jerry Jones being bought in too. And I think that's a great sign for the Cowboys. And one of the reasons why you bring in a guy like Shoddy to instill a new culture, a new energy, a new vibe. Jason Garrett, one of the problems with him, and he tried to bring in some competitiveness and some fight, and he did some good things there. But I think a lot of that was just compared against sort of the country club atmosphere that Wade Phillips put in place. And Garrett was no Bill Parcells, of course, but he at least tried. Shoddy's not to a whole nother level. Mike McCarthy was not. He was a very veterans guy. Hey, good job, guys. Take care of your bodies. All that kind of stuff. Took a very veterans approach kind of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. You can win a lot of games doing that, but it doesn't reset a culture. And the Cowboys have needed a culture reset, honestly, since 2011, right? And since Jason Garrett's first year. Garrett couldn't do it in the end. Mike McCarthy couldn't do it. Shoddy, if you look at Clark against Philly, you look at Turpin's effort, and you look at Jones's comment, it's seeping in. That effort, that motor, the competitiveness, the accountability, it's crept across the entire organization. Great sign for the future. All right, this next report here is courtesy of Patrick Walker. Talking Malik Davis, he's a really good piece. Highly recommend you check it out. At Voice of the Stars, also his handle on X. He's a good follow if you're looking for Cowboys news on social media. He posted the undrafted Gators' journey to his viral moment for the Cowboys on Thanksgiving against the Chiefs was an emotional one, including being waived 5 times, never tapping out. I prayed so hard for this. Yeah, Davis was the guy who, after he was waived by Dallas, I think in April, said, listen, I don't think I was ever going to come back. I think I was done with the Dallas Cowboys. He's brought back for, towards the end of like preseason training camp, gets a few touches. Phil Moff is a little beat up. Okay, kind of, special teams guy. They like his veteran experience to be a veteran back. Then Sanders gets hurt early on in the season. Okay, that's not great. But we got Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue's kind of disappointing. Okay, we need, bring Malik Davis in, get more offensive snaps. He's a good special teams player, high effort, high motor guy. And all he's done is make plays. He had a really good run against Philadelphia. Obviously, the 40-yard touchdown here against the Kansas City Chiefs on Thanksgiving while playing special teams too. He hasn't stopped a single snap on special teams. speaks to the effort culture that Shoddy wants, right? Listen, you're a football player. It's very Bill Parcells, Bill Belichickian in a certain aspect where, listen, if you play football, the effort, the little things, hustling to jump on the football, you're going to be a backup running back and a special teams player. And you're going to play both with a high level of effort, high level of intensity. Those things matter, right? It creeps into the organization at every level. You get people that just get bought in when you see, an Elijah Clark, making that play that just went absolutely viral against Philadelphia. Those things really matter. And that's one of the things you're starting to see with the Dallas Cowboys culturally. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not. I know I have. Where, over the past, I'm going to say this 15 years, right? If we're being totally honest, the media portrayal of the Dallas Cowboys has usually been negative, even when they've been playing well, right? We talked about the Cowboy hater industrial complex for a very long time. Even when they're winning, 3, 4, 5 game winning streak, or if they're good or playoff contender, whatever it may be, it was always sort of negative. It was like, oh, they're undisciplined. Yeah, they have talent. Yeah, but there's the drama. There's a lot of negativity. There's always just some way to spin what was ever going on in Dallas in a negative light. That's just how it's always been. But the past basically week or so, the Philly game and certainly after Thanksgiving, that vibe has changed 100%. I don't know if you guys have felt that. People in the media, they're talking about the Cowboys and they're talking effort. They're talking culture. They're talking football players. They're talking about guys who do the little things, right? Now, listen, they'll criticize Dallas. Dallas is among the league leaders in penalties per game and penalty yardage per game. That's a flaw. That part of that's on Shoddy for sure. Listen, they've got some issues with talent. Defensive end depth is not good. Safety position still not good. Linebackers need some improvement there. Obviously, corners incredibly young, incredibly inexperienced. Right, 3 of your 4 corners have have less than 10 total starts in their career. That's not a recipe for success, right? Obviously, but the reality is this is a team that if you again look at the media and look how they're talking about Dallas, they say effort, guts, well coached, execution, hustle. Little things, special teams, right? And now that the Cowboys, again, have played perfect. I talked about it yesterday. They had a -1 turnover differential over the past 3 games in their winning streak. A lot of penalties, right? So it hasn't been perfect for Dallas at all, right? Special teams, no big special teams plays. I mean, the last 3 weeks, you can make an argument, Brandon Aubrey missed a kick. That's basically been all Dallas as he had the game-winning kick against Philadelphia, but other than that, no big special teams returns. I guess you could say the Clark fumble, but that was more of a false wonder of effort play. It was less of a talent play in terms of the Cowboys special teams group. So there hasn't been, something where, we're just amazed by the Cowboys in terms of their talent. Even Pickens, you watch his plays, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of breaking tackles. It's hurdling people. It's Malik Davis, again, scratching and clawing onto the roster, doing the little things. And I'm going to circle back to this because I think it's really important. I remember, of course, again, against the Atlanta Falcons in the preseason, Micah Parsons laying on the table, disrespecting his teammates like Malik Davis, battling for a final roster spot, trying to get on the team. And Micah Parsons is a great player, not taking anything away from him. He obviously did a lot of great things with Dallas. He's doing great things for Green Bay. So he's a phenomenal player. But it speaks to the different vibe that has occurred in Dallas, where they've become a team where the prima donna who's just relaxing on the table in the middle of a preseason game, you've got the drama that has always seemed to circulate with the Cowboys, and now they're an effort team. Now they're a feisty team. They're a team full of guys you want to root for, with Malik Davis, with Elijah Clark, and with Brian Schottenheimer. And even people right now are saying good things about Jerry Jones for the first time, I feel like in years, in terms of the moves he's made, the Quinnen Williams trade, Kenny Clark, first-round picks, right? Obviously, people looking at it across the board saying Cowboys have a real legitimate shot for the future. They're kind of in the mix. They're fun and feisty now, but people are looking around like, this Cowboys team, they've actually got a plan for the long term, right? And I think that's the first time people have realized that Jerry Jones is doing some good things, that Shoddy's doing some good things, and that this Cowboys team in general has become a team for the first time in a long, long time that the rest of the country, instead of just hating outright, can kind of root for. All right, this next report here. Also, according to Patrick Walker at Voice of the Star, some injury news update here. He says, talking about Deron Bland, the foot is fine, according to Shoddy. Deron Bland had a bit of soreness in his foot, but the Cowboys don't have any concern about his availability for Week 14 versus the Lions. Early Week 14 injury cornerback scoreboard. Trayvon Diggs on track for possible return. Kalen Carson has solid odds. Talked about Diggs yesterday. Jerry Jones saying we expect him to be back. Shoddy's a little bit more, close to the vest. They want to see how he does in practice, which is fair. When it comes to the cornerback position in general, I know a lot of people, and we'll get into the comments section when it comes to Diggs specifically, because there's a lot of people very opinionated on Trayvon Diggs. But I do want to look at the inexperience, because obviously Kalen Carson, young player, he's single-digit career starts. Revel, we're talking about a guy who's played in 3 NFL games, Reddy Stewart, single-digit NFL career starts, nickel corner, right? Triquise Bridges, rookie 7th rounder, is sort of their backup corner at this point. He's had to play a lot of football this year with a lot of not so good. Nothing against Bridges. He competes hard. But listen, rookie 7th rounder, he's really struggled when he stepped into the game. So Deron Bland, if he's limited or if he's beat up, that's obviously a big problem for the Cowboys in terms of just having talent and depth. And I think the secondary position, while the future is really, really bright, Revel looks, sort of the part in a lot of ways. He's got to play a little bit better in some tackling aspects, but I think generally speaking, he's done fine. Kalen Carson has done a lot of good things as well. Obviously missed the game against Kansas City. Hope to get him back going forward. Deron Bland, sort of the steady Eddie. Reddy Stewart's a feisty nickel corner with the reps he plays. Not perfect, but, kind of the nickel corner mentality you need to have where, hey, can you step up in moments? Can you blitz, support the run, do some good coverage things? So I think Stewart's done some good things there. But I think the reality is there's a lot of depth and inexperience right now in terms of issues at the quarterback position. And if you're looking to make an actual serious run in the postseason, which, again, I think the Cowboys, they got an uphill battle to climb. A lot of football left. So, again, take it 1 week at a time. But right now, that's a big weakness. Because you do want to have some experience. You do want to have some depth. You need depth. Injuries are going to happen, guys. Barring something absolutely ridiculous, the Cowboys, and obviously we're talking about it on now the screen, do have some injury issues, right? Carson, trying to see if we can get him back. Bland is playing hurt, right? You don't know. There could be more injuries happening. Right now, they're one or, God forbid, multiple injuries at corner away from being in a real bind. And that's where Diggs, I think, being available is big. And I think that's where Butler being available is also big. So they do have some reinforcements ready just in case. But I think the lack of experience and the lack of depth at corner could be something to bite them in the butt, especially as the Cowboys get ready for the home stretch. All right, this next report is courtesy of Tom Downey. I think he's the Cowboys podcaster, I believe, does a lot of content for the Dallas Cowboys. But this is, I think, it's a big Jerry Jones thing here that kind of went under the radar, but I really liked. So, reminder on the Quinnen Micah trade stuff. Jerry misspoke, purpose or accident, but it was Quinnen plus picks for Micah, not the other way around. So, Jerry Jones said a few days ago that he originally in the offseason had called the New York Jets, well, the Cowboys did, and had called the New York Jets and said, hey, we'll send you Micah Parsons and a first-round pick for Quinnen Williams. Now, that has come out later, and there's been kind of a correction. No, it was Micah Parsons to New York. Dallas gets Quinnen Williams and a first-round pick. That most realistically was the trade offer that the Cowboys wanted from the Jets, and the Jets declined it at the time, obviously. And then, of course, the Cowboys made the trade later for Quinnen Williams. But the misspeak here, and Tom Downey has a good point, that was not a misspeak from Jerry Jones. It's very intentional. Jerry Jones is a guy that hypes up his players. Once they're Cowboys, they're great. They're amazing. He loves them to death. And this is something where I think Quinnen Williams and all these other new Cowboys, Logan Wilson, these young guys, Revel, these rookies, Booker, Ezraku, I think one of the things that Jerry Jones does with these new guys that's really important is he hypes them up to the extreme. He says, listen, we love Quinnen Williams. In fact, I would have given up Micah Parsons and a first-round pick for Quinnen Williams. I mean, you're talking about making number 92 feel good about himself, make 92 feel at home, happy he's a Dallas Cowboy. That'll do it. Right? When your owner comes out publicly and says, yeah, that defensive player of the year candidate that's all over the news, I would have sent him to the Jets and a first-round pick for the guy we got now. Quinnen Williams is sitting there like, I like Jerry. I like Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is a great guy, right? And those things matter. Now, did he actually make that trade offer? Of course not. It was the other way around. We all know that, and Jerry Jones knows that. The Cowboys front office knows that. But this is where using the media, and I think Herm Edwards famously said this, right? He says, I don't talk to the media, I talk through the media. I use the media to talk to my team. Jerry Jones does that extremely well. It's one of those underrated aspects of leadership. And this is where I know a lot of people are critical of Jones and can be critical of ownership and GMs and things like that. But this is where high-level thinking and high-level operators, billionaires, millionaires, business owners, entrepreneurs at an extremely high level, they operate like this, right? They use media and other platforms to talk to different people and different employees and different business partners, right? They use every tool they have in their tool belt. They're not dumb, right? As much whatever you want to say about Jerry Jones, he's not a dumb person at all. You can say he's wrong in a lot of instances, but he's not a dumb person. Very, very smart, very crafty, intelligent guy. And Jerry Jones here, again, is using the media publicity to make Quinnen Williams feel even more at home, make him feel more loved. Talk about how happy he is the Cowboys have him right now. In fact, that he would have given up Micah Parsons and a first-round pick for him. Well, we all know it was the other way around. But this is what high-level operators do. They use the media to help establish a narrative, to help establish a culture, to help establish whatever they're trying to establish. And right now, Jerry Jones, again, he is bought 100% into Shawty's culture, the vibe, the energy. And this is a big part of it. don't discount the level of Jerry Jones buy-in to this football team and the long-term trajectory. Listen, we know right now they're 6-5-1. They're one game above 500, right? So if we're being totally honest, it's not like they're 11-1. It's not like they're 10-2, right? And they're setting the world on fire. If you look at the NFC at large, who's the top contenders? The Rams for sure, right? I think the Bears are good. I wouldn't call them elite, so I would say I'd probably have to go the Rams and Packers are 1-2 if I'm being totally honest. I think, if you want to go the NFC West, the Seattle Seahawks are a good team as well. I'm not 100% sure. And listen, the Philadelphia Eagles are the champions until they're not the champions anymore. So there's three, I think, four contenders in the NFC, if we're being totally honest right now, right? Nothing against San Francisco, nothing against Chicago, nothing against Detroit, nothing against Tampa Bay. I just don't really see it right now with those guys. That can change, but I just don't see it. Dallas isn't in that conversation either. Dallas isn't even in the second tier, right? If I just name the top 3 or 4, the next bucket of guys, the Bucks, the Bears, the Lions, those are the tier 2 teams, right? So Dallas isn't even, in my opinion, a tier 3 team today in the NFC. They're not even a tier 1 or tier 2. They're a tier 3 team. But despite that, the vibes are very high. Jerry Jones is very correctly trying to capitalize on that, get the energy going, keep the buzz alive, getting everyone bought in. And this is just really good leadership here from Jerry Jones, getting everybody on board, capitalizing on the momentum, right? One of the things that can happen with teams is that, as the season, there's highs and lows, is that when things go really good, you don't have the entire culture riding that wave and momentum. It's one of the problems that teams like the Carolina Panthers have had, just too much inconsistency. When things are going great, they don't capitalize on it. Right now, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys are trying to capitalize on the momentum, capitalize on the energy, continue to build that culture, get everyone happy to be here, get everyone just totally on board. That's why Trayvon Diggs coming back is awesome and the Cowboys being excited about it, right? That's why they're rah, rah, rah about Diggs, right? Everything's good vibes across the board. Keep everyone's energy positive. Keep those good feelings going. Because listen, there's going to be, I hope not, but there's going to be games that go bad. There's going to be disappointments the rest of the season and in the future, right? And when you get those disappointments, you react to them, right? Losing breeds clarity. You can make the changes. But when the vibes are good, you want to keep the momentum going, keep the energy going. And that's exactly what Jerry Jones does here. And he does it better than any owner in the NFL. All right, this next report here is just a quick one here. This is from Ted Wynn, who does some football NFL film analysis. I'm going to be totally honest. I disagree with Wynn like 99% of the time, but because I agree with him on this play, he says good things about the Cowboys, I will hype him up. But it just goes back to what we're seeing in the media, right? You can see on the screen there in front of you, he said the Cowboys have one of the most well-designed offenses in the league. And it goes back to the media narrative. I talked about how people, talking heads, ESPN, Fox Sports, whatever, are saying good things about the Cowboys. The effort culture, the hustle culture, the intensity, the mental toughness that Shotty has inspired and led the charge on, top of the roster to the owner. But it's also the X's and O's. We're seeing the media mentality with the Cowboys completely flip. Just, there was some discussion early in the season about Shotty doing a good job and Clayton Adams doing a good job. That has continued along with the good culture vibes and things like that Shotty and the Cowboys leaders have put in place. And it just speaks to right now the media landscape when it comes to Dallas has shifted. Even in 2023, even in 2022, really going back to almost 2021, there was a lot of negativity with Dallas. It's like, oh, they're winning, but look at their flaws, bad offense, drama, Jerry Jones is a buffoon, Mike McCarthy can't handle in-game situation, whatever it may be, right? The reality is just a few years later, and interestingly enough, the Cowboys, again, they're 6-5-1. They're not exactly like 12-0 or anything. The media has completely shifted their narrative, and it goes along with what our eyes are telling us, that there's something happening with Dallas. There is a vibe shift. What it leads to in the future, I don't know, but there definitely is something, and we can all feel it, and we can all see it. All right, our last report here is some more injury updates, talking about corner position. According to @Voice of the Star, Patrick Walker, he writes, Kalen Carson had some soreness on a short week per shotty, but he wanted to play versus Chiefs, a positive sign for his odds to travel versus the Lions. Yeah, Carson, they did the pregame workout with him, and they said, just not going to push it, right? Short week, it's the right move to make, right? You don't want to, last thing you want to do is have a guy who's been dealing with some injuries in his career, and you use a key piece of your cornerback room going forward, re-aggravated injuries, smart move by Dallas to sit him against Kansas City. And then Patrick Walker asked about Josh Butler, and specifically if he has a chance about returning to the field during the 2025 season. Shotty said, there's a roster management to this piece as well. If called upon, I have no question he'll be ready. Yeah, I think for me, they're keeping Butler as sort of the depth piece for injuries, right? Because you only get so many more, activations left. You got so many, different roster moves. If you activate Butler, right, you're taking, and he has to take a roster spot. You got 21 day. There's a lot of things to factor into this, especially with Trayvon Diggs, his 21-day window being open. Listen, I think the reality is the Cowboys right now with Butler and Diggs, they've got two, I think, capable backup corners, two capable corners that are ready. I think, listen, nothing against Triquise Bridges, but I'd rather have Trayvon Diggs in that cornerback room going forward than I would have number 25, because he would obviously add a lot of depth and talent. I know a lot of people are very high on Butler, and I like him too. But the reality is he's a guy, and he came out recently saying he's ready to go. He's rip-roaring. I think they may have to bring him at some point when I think injuries will occur. I just think they do, right? You just have to be prepared for it. And right now the Cowboys, and it speaks to, again, to shoddy good roster management, right? It's like, listen, we know the cornerback room is young. We know we've got guys in Revel. We've got guys in Carson. We've got guys in Diggs. And we've got guys, and even Deron Bland, that have had some injury issues in their careers, some severe, some not. So let's keep a guy ready. Let's keep our powder dry. Right, let's have a guy in Butler who we know we can count on to be a depth piece down the stretch if we need him, should we need him because of injury. And again, it's just good roster management. It's good decision making. It's probably frustrating for Butler, but he gets it, right? He understands. Butler's not a dumb guy. He's a very smart guy, actually. So I have no doubt that he understands completely what the Cowboys are doing with him. And listen, that's the approach you got to take sometimes, right? You only have so many IR activations left. And there's still Phil Maffa lurking, of course, down the stretch here. Cowboys want to activate him to see what he brings to the table. That could be something interesting as well to keep an eye on. So there's a lot of roster management the Cowboys are going to have to work through the rest of the season when we come starting, of course, next Thursday and then the final games after that. So just activating guys and getting guys on the roster today, there needs to be more of a thought process to it, a more methodical approach, a more week by week. Because if you just activate everybody, say, oh, let's see Phil Maffa, oh, let's activate Butler, and then you just have a rash of injuries, then you're just screwed, right? And you don't want to be screwed. You always want to make sure, for example, like managing a game, you want to make sure you have your timeouts. Don't use all your timeouts. You'll need them at the end of the game, right? Hold on to your timeout in the third quarter. Listen, take the delay a game. Right, I'd rather lose 5 yards than lose a key timeout on a 2nd and 10 at midfield 8 minutes into the third quarter. Right, that's just smart roster management or smart game management. Just like this is smart roster management. All right, let's get into the comments, guys. There's a lot of interesting comments today. First one from Robert Bass, 3667. He writes, Nick, our health is in good shape right now, and if we can maintain and if things fall apart, we are a top 3 team in my lowly opinion. Even though we are -5 turnover ratio, the energy and refuse to give up is a factor one cannot put on a graph, and I will take this over analytics any day. That point right there, it speaks to why the media landscape is shifting. Because, and I've hit on this point a million times, but it's not like the Cowboys, for example, the Bears, great example. They're winning and doing good football, but they're doing it on the back of being, plus $1 million in turnover margin, right? For example, right, or other teams like the Packers are playing great, but they're just stacked with talent across the board. So it's one of those things where it's different when you're just uber talented or you're winning the turnover margin by a lot. The Cowboys have a lot of talent, but they got a lot of young pieces. They got a lot of scrappy guys. They got a new coach, new system, year one, and they're losing the turnover margin, like you point out, and they're still playing good football. That's obviously something the media is noticing too. Like, hey, listen, there's a vibe shift here. Robert goes on to write, our defense will get better and the team believes in themselves, and we have a dominant O and D line, and Dak does make mistakes, but I'll take Dak over most quarterbacks. There's outstanding leadership both in coaching and players. I believe we will be playing deep in January, and I realize I'm a bit over the top, but I am a Cowboy fan. Yeah, being a part of being a fan is being a little over the top. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, I'm not a big so my take when it comes to the postseason is I don't even think about standings or even talk about playoff seeding or where things need to go until after Thanksgiving, and that includes the games that follow Thanksgiving. So Tuesday morning will be the first time okay, let's look at the playoff standings and see where things sit. And then I really don't seriously start looking at it until usually right before Christmas, because we've seen collapses one way or the other, right? I'm a big take things one game at a time. If you just play good football and you do that over long stretches of time, things will work out. In the last 3 games, the Cowboys have played good football. I just want to see them continue to play good football. If you do that, things will work out. Benjamin Butner 141 writes, they didn't get where they wanted to be the last 15 years because they were horrible in the middle of their defense all the way to the safeties. They chased the high dollar positions in the draft and neglected defensive tackle, linebacker, and safety strategically. Big mistake. Yeah, safety for sure. But listen, defensive tackle, they just missed. Well, I don't think it was neglect. They just missed. Tristan Hill comes to mind. Obviously, Mozzie Smith. I mean, they spent some capital there, right? They had, you remember Irving was supposed to be a stud, and then he just, geez, talking about a wasted talent there at defensive tackle that they really liked to be a disruptive force. So I think it was just they had a lot of young guys they liked, they just missed. Linebackers been injuries. Remember, Sean Lee, Jalen Smith couldn't overcome his injury he had coming out of college, right? And then of course Van Der Esch. So it's one of those things where Van Der Esch right now should be literally in the prime of his NFL career leading this Cowboys defense, right? He's a guy that should be like 28, 29 right now. Should be the veteran group, a veteran stabilizing. Like they should not be having to trade for Logan Wilson or trade for Kenneth Murray. It should be Van Der Esch sitting next to Overshown right now. But injuries ended his career, just like they did with Sean Lee, just like, the Cowboys have had to deal with that linebacker. And it's one of those unfortunate things. They actually hit on linebacker in those two instances. It's just injuries, man. It's just so unfortunate. And even Jalen Smith had a lot of potential. He just, again, he couldn't overcome the injury he had when coming out of college. So it's one of those things where I think the Cowboys front office missed at defensive tackle, didn't do enough at safety. I agree there. But I think linebacker was just bad luck. And I'm not saying, other teams have bad luck too, for sure. But boy, oh boy, I mean, with the injuries at that one position. And then, of course, you had Dan Quinn. They just said, we're just going to neglect it because we're going to change our approach on how we play defense at linebacker. I think that did them in too. So it was a lot of issues across the board. But I think when it came to linebacker, bad injury luck. Because, you should have Van Der Esch right now, prime of his career, veteran guy, team captain. He should be everything right now. Paired with Overshown, paired with Leofau, Shamar James learning from Van Der Esch. That should be the Cowboys linebacking core right now. But the injuries just did him in. And listen, that's part of the game. It happens, but it is sort of one of those what-if moments for sure. Bonnie commercial rights. Did you know this? Sam Williams is finally showing up for the last two games. Yeah, it's interesting, right? He's a guy that's actually played a little bit better football ever since he was essentially benched for Ezeraku. But I also think, again, it's the Quinnen Williams effect, right? It's when you have a lot of really talented disruptive forces inside, it allows guys like Williams and Fowler, suddenly they don't have to do as much. Right. And when you have a guy who, can be a disruptive force and maybe make a big play here or there in 20, 25 snaps, he doesn't have to play 40 snaps. He doesn't have to do everything. Right. He's got guys inside that are getting double teamed and he gets one-on-one matchups all game long. And listen, I don't think Sam Williams is playing great like elite level football, but he's making some plays. And I think it just goes back to when you take some burden off other players' plates. Same thing with Kenneth Murray, although I think he had a rough game against Kansas City. But he did have a few good plays against Philadelphia and a few good plays against the Raiders. When you take some of the load off other players' plates that are not good players, nothing against Williams and Murray, I just think they're just not good players right now for Dallas. Suddenly they don't look quite as bad because they don't have to do as many bad things. They only have to focus on things they're good at, generally speaking. And I think that's what we're seeing with Williams and Kenneth Murray. And I think that's one of the reasons why they look like they're playing better. It's because, if before Williams was playing 30 snaps and 15 of those snaps were things he was good at and 15 of those snaps were things he struggled with, he looked pretty bad. But now he's playing 20 snaps where 15 are things he's good with, 5 are things he struggled with, and suddenly he's fresher, he's got more energy, and there's a lot fewer snaps he plays where it's things he's bad at, so he looks better, right? And he gets to hustle more, he gets to be more energetic, right? Vibes get better. It's the compounding effect. It's why talent matters. It's why the talent deficiency the Cowboys had, injuries in the secondary, and of course up front, in the front seven in general, Overshown, obviously linebacker problems, defensive line problems. It was a real issue that just affected so many different positions. Anchors Away 9893 writes, speaking of wide receivers dropping passes, Rice dropped a clutch time pass for the Chiefs. I really love our wide receivers. Lane and Pickens are the stars, but Turpin and Flournoy have proven themselves as well. Yeah, Turpin has kind of had a quiet season, but in the last 2 games, outside of the fumble against Philly, has really turned it on. A little inconsistent with the drops with in Turpin's case, but I mean, again, except for that fumble, really played at a high level. Flournoy is a really good guy. Love the fact that the Cowboys are giving him more opportunities. When he says, number 2 here, agreed on playoff stuff, a lot can happen, but I'm obviously optimistic. Yeah, I mean, one game at a time, for sure. But they're playing good football. That's the thing I was talking about. Play good football, things will take care of itself. Number 3, I think Diggs will play well. I do think this is his last season as a Cowboy, but you never know. Yeah, Diggs is playing for his career, right? He understands it. His film wasn't good this season. He's got injury issues. He's got maybe some locker room issues. He's probably going to be a June 1st release. He's not an idiot, right? He knows he's playing for his career right now. He wants to put some good tape out there for sure, and he's going to be extra motivated to make sure his career doesn't end, very early on. I'm also a huge Overshown fan, native Texan and Longhorn alumni. I hope he stays healthy and leads this defense for many years. Yeah, I mean, he's just an awesome guy, awesome player. Again, health is going to be the thing for him and bouncing back from the injury, but he looks pretty spry, looks pretty quick. I'm excited to see what big plays he makes down the stretch, and I'm excited to see what he does for this Cowboys defense and him being a part of it for many years to come. I hate being cold. So do I, man. So do I. Thus why I live in San Diego, but I, for one, appreciate your dedication. Grab some warm coffee. Yeah, man, I am glad to be back inside. It was cold. Freezing, below freezing temperatures, recording and talking is a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be honest. I thought, I could suffer through that. No big deal. It's just talking. But boy, it gets a little chilly. All right, let's get into some more comments here. This is from Dirty Mondo. Okay. This bum wants to come back talking about Diggs. Now that the team is winning, he can cheer from the bench. A lot of vibes when it comes to this about Trayvon Diggs. Hunter-M4H5E also says, I'm out on Diggs, the person. If he can come back and turn his image around, though his play may be that changes, but I'm still of the mindset, let's commit fully to culture and get him out of here after the season. And if that's the case, I don't care for playing him either. I think the thing with Trayvon Diggs is, I understand the culture part of it. I really do. And, there's some clashes there, and I get it 100%. But to be fair to Trayvon Diggs, when he has played, and, it's been bad in some instances, but he was great against Philly week 1. He was great against Green Bay coming off the bench. I mean, he is a guy, when you look at turnovers and interceptions, the Cowboys don't have a lot of picks. If you look at the cornerback position, it's Bland's pick 6, it's Bridges intercepting a wayward throw against Denver, and it's Wilson having 2 interceptions that were basically gifts, and Marquise Bell getting a gift interception, and that's it. Cowboys don't get a lot of interceptions. Trayvon Diggs does bring that element to Dallas. And listen, there's going to be games where you're going to need takeaways. You're going to play a little off. Not going to be your day. You're going to need some turnovers to be the equalizer. And the Cowboys really haven't gotten that on defense this year. That's the one thing they've really struggled with, right? If we're being, again, going back to the last 3 games, 3-game winning streak, guys. 2 total takeaways on defense during that stretch. 1 against the Raiders, 1 against Philadelphia. Remember, the second one against Philly was on special teams. So that's not great. That's not ideal. You at least want 1 a game, right? That's sort of the marker, 1 to 2 a game. Diggs is a guy that can bring that from a takeaway perspective, and that's what I hope he can do. Now, and I understand the culture mindset, and I get all of that. But he's had time to disconnect. The team is feeling better. The vibes are better. I think this is a stronger group of leaders with Overshawn, Quinnen Williams, right? The changes they've made, the shoddy effect here. I think this is something where Diggs can come in, and I'm going to be optimistic here and maybe do some good things if he's willing to check in and buy in. But here's the other part of it, guys. If they feel like Diggs isn't bought in, do you think they're going to play him? Of course not. Of course not. They'll roll with Carson. I mean, they cut Kyrie Elam, right? They benched Trayvon Diggs before the Packers, right? Again, this is they benched CeeDee Lamb and poor Pickens for a drive. Do you think if Trayvon Diggs is an issue in the locker room or the game plan, or if he's struggling in the game, do you think they won't bench him? Do you think they will play him? Of course not. I trust Shoddy and his leadership to not fall into that trap. But if he is bought in, and listen, all accounts from the Cowboys, they say, listen, he's doing a great job. Then I think they'll keep him around, and I think he'll do some good things the rest of the season. Because again, he's playing for his career. And don't discount that, guys. And you need Trayvon Diggs if you're going to be a legit team down the stretch, if that's your goal. I know a lot of people sit there and say, well, the young guys. Listen, look at this cornerback room. Reddy Stewart, essentially a rookie, right? You got Revel, a rookie. Kalen Carson, essentially a rookie. Bridges, a rookie. They've fought hard. They've competed. Safety room is not so good. So it's not like they have great safeties behind them to cover up their flaws. Guys, it's just not sustainable to play that level of youth at pretty much every single cornerback position. Diggs is a veteran guy. He's been there before, and when healthy, he can still do a good job in coverage. Maybe, do you want him in run defense tackling? Probably not. But you're talking about 30, 40 snaps a game. If he's bought into that in coverage situations, I'll take him. I think he's a good player. Good length, good size. I think he can do some good things. I would like to see him back. Again, I understand the culture concerns, but I do think he can have a positive impact on this team. Joan and Mondre, welcome back to the team, Diggs. Yeah, I mean, if he's, I think he can be an asset. I really can down the stretch here. 2309119 writes, SMI Cowboys Show is my favorite Dallas Cowboys content, news, and info for sure. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Try and do a good job anyway. Try and battle through the adversity, so to speak, with it being a little out of my normal element. But back into the fold now, back to normal for a very long time, hopefully. The real Daryl 282 writes, with the addition of QW, it will help Diggs become quarterbacks because quarterbacks cannot step up in the pocket like we seen prior to the trade for Quinn Williams. This is a great point. This is actually a standing point, Daryl, that The reality is that we saw Diggs and the struggles he had were pre-Quinnen Williams, pre-Overshown, pre the adjustment with Ezraku starting with a better pass rush, right? Pre-Clowney playing better football. Is there a world where Diggs, with his better pass rush, suddenly starts generating takeaways, deflections, making more plays? It's certainly possible. Now, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but the reality is that maybe some of the Cowboys thinking, it's like, listen, we're getting some pressure now. And listen, when there's pressure, Diggs can make some of these plays here. We see Deron Bland, he had a pick six against Washington, almost had a pick against Kansas City, but it's just the turnovers just aren't there. They're going to need some sort of big plays here down the stretch because, like I said, going -1, losing the turnover ratio consistently, eventually that'll come back to bite you. And I think Diggs is a guy with an improved pass rush, an improved defensive line and linebacker core can take advantage of some of those situations and maybe generate some takeaways. PA Longhorn 421 writes, biggest difference I see in our coaches is we have a mentor as well as a leader versus past years. Someone holding players accountable, business before pleasure. Didn't have that before. Also, the type of players they're bringing in are a good mixture with our guys. A lot of mentoring and coaching going on between players on the sideline. Love to see that. Credit Shoddy and his staff. All seem to be on the same page and getting better. Anyways, hope you had a good holiday. It was fantastic up here in PA. Well, yeah, I did have a very good Thanksgiving. I hope all you guys enjoy your Thanksgiving and continue to enjoy your Thanksgiving weekend. It is the most wonderful time of the year. I love, Thanksgiving and of course Christmas season. It's all the way through New Year's. It's just awesome. Family, football, it's just a fun time of the year. At least for me personally. Hope it is for you guys as well. Yeah, I do think the culture with the veterans and the players they brought in and the coaches, there is a lot of buy-in. They did get the right kind of guys for the most part. But the leaders of the team matter, like the guys that have been here. Pickens only works in Dallas because of Lamb, Shoddy, Prescott, right? That matters, right? Having Lamb work with and be buddies with Pickens and work with him and integrate him, Prescott the same, Shoddy the same, that really matters, guys. Don't discount that, right? Overshown being a high-energy, positive linebacker, that works with Shamar James and Logan Wilson, all those guys. That really matters, right? Osa Odigizua, Kenny Clark, right? New addition Kenny Clark being good leaders helps integrate Quinnen Williams. It really matters. It really does, right? Jadeveon Clowney, a great addition, but it only works if you have guys like Ezraku that are willing to listen and learn, right? Again, the leadership matters, right? Those things really matter. Tyler Booker doing a great job. It only really works if you have guys like Tyler Smith and Cooper Beebe in their own ways taking on leadership roles. Smith especially, talking about a captain of this offensive line. There's been some commentary about Tyler Smith saying he's having a bad year. Again, I don't really I think he's doing okay. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on his film. I think he's doing pretty good in a lot of instances, although you can make an argument, it's not his best year, whatever. I think the reality is, talking about leadership, Tyler Smith taking ownership, you better believe it. Leader of this team, leader of the offensive line, for sure. That's what he is. That's what we're seeing from the Cowboys. The new guys stepping up, the Kenny Clark additions, the Quinnen Williams additions, A-plus kind of leader guys for sure, Javonte Williams. But it's the other guys that were already on this team. Lamb, Prescott, Tyler Smith, DeMarvion Overshown, Osa Odigizua, stepping up in their own right, becoming leaders. And I don't discount that. That's really important. And I think that's one of the things that'll be the future of this team going forward is that next generation of leaders, of the guys that have been around the block. They've been through the bumps and bruises, right? They were there in 23 and 22, and they were there in 24. And, listen, they're an experienced bunch, right? They may not be, gray around the hair, right? They may not be in their 30s or mid-30s or a super veteran team, but they've seen a lot. They've done a lot of things, and they've become leaders in their own right. Odigizua, Lamb, Overshown, right? Tyler Smith, Ferguson in a lot of ways too, right? The leadership matters, and the Cowboys have that, and some new additions they brought in, A+, guys like Kenny Clark, Clowney, absolutely outstanding, Javonte Williams. But it's the guys that were already on the team, stepping up in this new shoddy-led culture, with Lawrence gone, with Parsons gone, Brandon Cooks gone, right? All those guys gone. The new guys are stepping up, Mike McCarthy, and they deserve a lot of credit. All right, this next comment here is from Carmick Patina. I'm soaking up some sun and sand in Cabo San Lucas, watch the Thanksgiving game here. Viva Los Cowboys, watching Cowboys content in paradise. Well, I tell you what, congratulations to you. That sounds awesome. Keith Talbert, 4153. Why would we be happy that Diggs is back? The man is terrible in zone coverage, and they still play primarily zone coverage. Against the Chiefs, they played more man than usual. It was still 60% zone. Diggs is not the answer, and in my view, he will only hinder what they have going on. Jerry said Revel did not have an injury. He had a malfunctioning knee brace. He is good. I don't like Jerry meddling with the defensive chemistry now.
BMR Collects has a kind of a very similar comment there. I've been kind of down on Trayvon Diggs because, let's face it, the Cowboys haven't come close to getting their value for the huge extension they gave him. He's making $19 million this year alone. I'm still pulling for him, though, and I think everyone is. Like you said, he's playing for his career, so hopefully he'll be out there next week to help out. Yeah, listen, I think Trayvon Diggs terrible in zone coverage. Yeah, I think he's a better man guy, but they haven't playing better man or more man coverage. And listen, he did have moments. He played great against Green Bay, played great against Philly. Week 1, did okay against Carolina, right? It wasn't like a great game against Carolina, but was perfectly fine. I don't think Diggs is a guy I understand people looked at the Bears game and listen, he gave up a huge touchdown. Yeah, that was awful. Okay, for sure. But even outside of that one play, he played the other 25, 35 plays, or however many plays he played, he was perfectly fine outside that one play. So again, I know that was a really bad play, and I know he was awful against the the Giants. I get that 100%, right? And I understand completely where a lot of people's heads out when it comes to Trayvon Diggs. I get it. And a big part of the concern, like BMR Collects writes, is the fact that he hasn't lived up to the contract, and that's a big thing, right? If he was a third year, fifth round pick, if he was Kalen Carson, if you're getting that level of performance from Kalen Carson, you'd be like, hey, listen, he's it is what it is, right? It's not costing a lot. So again, the performance versus the cost, that's the big driver here. I understand. But the reality is, you look at the cornerback room, and if you actually look at the data and look at the numbers and look at the film, listen, there's a lot of things to like about, but it's not like Revel is playing like at an all-pro level through 3 games. Not that anyone would expect him to be, but it's just true. It's not like Kalen Carson is playing like an all-pro level. Neither is Reddy Stewart, right? They're playing at a feisty. They're tough. They're energetic. The future is very, very bright. And again, I understand Trayvon Diggs wasn't playing at an all-pro level either. But to sit there and say, like, we like what we have at the cornerback room, it's like, listen, I think they're playing well, but they're very young, they're very inexperienced, and there's a mixed bag at times. And I think getting Trayvon Diggs back in key situations, right? Again, I'm not saying you want to throw him in and have him play 100 snaps right away, especially on a run downs, tackling downs. But I think he can do some good things. Again, he's playing for his career, and he knows it. And finally here, William Van Dyke, 2849, writes, there was a lot of Diggs bashing, perhaps some deserved, but historically he has been a bane to opposing QBs to the point of them ignoring throwing in his direction. He has a great acceleration at the point of attack when healthy. Yeah, Trayvon, like, if you look at the Cowboys defense right now, look at their secondary, there's maybe Deron Bland, but even then it's we'll throw Deron Bland in there. Fine, I'll say Deron Bland. But if you take away, you look at their secondaries and their linebackers, there is no one in that group that strikes fear into opposing offenses. Where, man, we got to be careful throwing in him because he can make you pay, right? Deron Bland's the only guy. Reddy Stewart, nope. Diggs, Revel, nope. Kellen Carson, nope. Young, they don't know. But Malik Hooker, nope. Donovan Wilson, certainly not. Marquise Bell, certainly not. Kenneth Murray, yeah, let's attack Kenneth Murray. Everyone wants to attack Kenneth Murray. Logan Wilson, again, veteran guy, but doesn't strike fear. Overshown, kind of hard to see exactly, what teams will want to do. He plays closer to the line of scrimmage anyway. So who strikes fear? Deron Bland kind of does. But we saw the Arizona Cardinals eviscerate him, so there's sort of a mixed bag there. How about Trayvon Diggs? He will strike some fear into defenses. He will give to offenses, He'll give these guys pause. Because he's a guy, and he's done this in the past, that can flip a game with a takeaway. He can jump around. Pick six, interceptions, right? He single-handedly won games for the Cowboys in the past. He'd flipped games for the Cowboys in the past, for sure. He's had moments where he's been an all-pro. He's a guy that can turn a game on its head completely with a great interception or a great takeaway or a great break on the football, like you mentioned. And that's something the Cowboys don't have outside their defensive line, a guy that teams have to account for. They have to, okay, where is he? We can't make a mistake here. Listen, right now they can probably tell themselves, if you make a mistake throwing at Revel, you may be fine. Make a mistake throwing at Stewart, at Wilson, at Hooker, Marquise Bell, right? You may be okay. Deron Bland, he'll make you pay. But other than that, you can throw the ball up in space. We saw this Jalen Hurts, by the way. We saw this Mahomes, too, as well, where he kind of threw the football up in space on some throwaways and it kind of, hit the turf. It's like people are like, boy, that's kind of an aggressive throw there. The reality is, though, Diggs, he has the ability to make you pay in those situations. Ball hawking skills, breaking on the football. Don't discount that, right? Now, listen, he's got to be bought in. He's got to be willing to do the things and all of that. And listen, I don't think Shiny will play him if he's not bought in. I think we've seen that from the culture the Cowboys have set in place. But they do need that playmaking element in the secondary and linebacking core. And listen, I could be proven wrong. They could play Trayvon Diggs and he could be awful. Fine, if that happens, I'll eat crow, right? 100%. But I just think they need that playmaking element. They need someone who can at least strike fear. because one of the things that happens when you have a better pass rush, the process gets sped up a little bit. And there are going to be opportunities for teams to hit, those quick 8-yard outs, those 8-yard hitches, right? Just to get the ball out of your hands. And they're there a lot of times in the NFL, just basically in zone coverage. There's going to be a lot of chances. But Diggs right there on one side of the field, if you want to throw that 8-yard out, that's going to put a pause on a quarterback. And if the quarterback just pauses for a second, that could be all Quinnen Williams needs. That could be all Ezraku needs, all Odigizua needs to get that hit, to get that sack. And things can compound, right? And I'm going to take the positive approach. I think Diggs, if he's healthy, if he's bought in, he is an asset for this Cowboys defense the rest of the year. All right. That is the comments for today, guys. Thank you to all my commenters, and thank you to all the viewers. You guys are awesome. Last couple days, obviously, it's been fun over Thanksgiving. Relaxing NFL Sunday, of course. I always love when the Cowboys win on Thanksgiving, and then you have the following Sunday, because you can just kick back and just relax and just watch other teams play if you want to, run some errands, do some chores, watch your favorite Cowboys content creators, right? It's fun, right? There's no stress, which of course it's really good to see, especially now that the Cowboys, playing better football. But listen, they've got, of course, no rest for the weary. They're going to get ready to go. They've got a game Thursday against Detroit. Both teams played, on Thanksgiving. So there's going to be some beat up and fatigue nature there. It's prime time in Detroit. So we'll see how the Cowboys prepare for that. And I will be here starting, of course, tomorrow morning to go through that with you guys. But until then, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.